Good morning, loves. This morning, staying with Psalms, I was in Psalms 142, and the psalm is entitled A Cry of Distress. And there were a few things that blessed me that I saw in the passage, and I thought it might bless you. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. And I'm reading from the CSB Bible. I cry aloud to the Lord. I plead aloud to the Lord for mercy. I pour out my complaint before him. I reveal my trouble to him. Although my spirit is weak within me, you know my way. Along this path I travel, they have hidden a trap for me. Look to the right and see. No one stands up for me. There is no refuge for me. No one cares about me. I cry to you, Lord. I say, you are my shelter, my portion in the land of the living. Listen to my cry, for I am very weak. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Free me from prison so that I can praise your name. The righteous will gather around me because you deal generously with me. It's clear in this passage that David is indeed in distress. And when I was reading it and just kind of pondering it, the thought came to me, and it's a phrase that we hear relatively often around nowadays, that it's okay not to be okay. Because in this passage, David clearly was not okay. You see, when David wrote this, it is believed that David wrote this from a cave where he was hiding from Saul, who some might say was unjustly pursuing him to kill him. You see, he had won many battles for Saul, but because of the prophecy and the call of God on his life, Saul became jealous and angry and sought to kill David. And the interesting thing is, David's ethical stance, moral stance, position in God, belief in God, caused him, even though he had opportunity to kill Saul, to take Saul's life, he did not. And so in this dark, cold place of hiding, David pins this psalm to the Lord. And so it is okay not to be okay. But I want to propose to you that it's not okay to stay there. It is not okay to stay not okay. And why do I say that? I say that because God is a God who will meet us in our own individual caves. He will meet us in our brokenness. He will meet us in our pain. He will meet us in our fleeing. He will meet us in our fear. He will meet us in our terror. He will meet us in the darkest places of our lives and illuminate and deliver us from those places if we cry out to him. You see, we see in this passage that David was desperate. And he knew that he was desperate. He didn't put on airs. He didn't fake the funk. He wasn't dealing with God. He wasn't coming to God with his representative, believing and thinking that everything was okay, speaking in eloquent words and utilizing words that are multisyllabic and full of wisdom. No, David cried out to God and said, I cry aloud. I plead with you, Lord, for mercy. I also saw that David understood that he was desperate and he desperately needed God. Do you desperately need God? Are you crying out to the Savior? David, in this passage, we read that he begged, he implored God to listen to him. I imagine that because he understood that he knew who God was and he knew the capability of God. And so, God, you are the only one that can fix this circumstance. You are the only one that can deliver me. You are the only one that can free me from this bondage. You are the only one that can help me in this darkness. Lord, you are the only one. And with that, he understood who God was. I saw in this passage that David, in his relationship with God, could be raw. He could be emotional. He could be vulnerable. and he can be needy in his pursuit of God. Far too often, situations, circumstances, religion dictates that we maintain a certain posture when we come before God, and that we utilize a certain format by which we approach the throne of grace. But I encourage you to know that that is not so. And we can use our brother David as an example for how we can approach God in various situations. We see here that David felt alone. Now, whether or not David was physically alone or there were people around him is inconsequential. Because how many of you know that we can be alone in a crowd? We can have hundreds around us and yet feel like we are the only person there and no one sees us. In this feeling alone, we understand that there is no one that can reach us but God. I saw in this passage that David saw his own strength, but he recognized that his enemy was stronger. And whether or not that was a physical strength, because we know that David was a fierce warrior, somehow he understood that he needed God to intervene on his behalf and to rescue him, because those who were pursuing him were too strong for him. Have you said to the Lord that, God, this thing that I'm battling, this addiction that I'm fighting, this war that I'm in, these people I'm up against, this trouble that I'm facing is far too strong for me, and I need you, Lord, to rescue me and free me from this prison. Prisons can be mental or prisons can be physical. Only you and the Lord understands what your prison looks like. But if you are in a prison, I implore you to cry out to the God who neither sleeps nor slumbers. I implore you to be raw, to be real, to be vulnerable, understanding that in your not being okay, God is the God that will get you to okay. I saw that David's cry for freedom was not selfish, but it was so that he would give praise back to God. It was, God, release me, free me. It is an act of worship. I will give you praise, that it's not on my own strength. It's not on my own ability. It's not in my own power, but it is in your power. And I will give you praise. And in my giving you praise, people will be drawn to me and they will gather around me, because you dealt generously with me. You delivered me. You freed me. So I look up to you and I give praise to you and I give glory to you, that people may come to me and see you. You see, I started with saying it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay with staying not okay. And I know grammatically that's probably incorrect. But I know the God that created the heavens and the earth, who can number the number of hairs on my head, who knows every tear we cry, who looks to deliver us from our enemies. That God will free us from the prison that we find ourselves in, from the caves that we may have been dwelling in, from the situations we find ourselves in, that we may be free in Him, to give glory to Him, to be light in this land to those around us, that people may see what God has done for us, draw near to us, that we point them to Him. God is a deliverer. God is hearing you in your cry of distress. Cry out to Him. As always, beloved, I love you. But God, He loves you best. Have an amazing day on purpose.